We're back at Northeast Mississippi Community College working on our third recipe of our Make It Take It. Right here I have 4 eggs, dumping them in here, for one of my most requested muffin slash bread recipes. This recipe was given to me by Nanette Gann, my dear friend who worked with me. Well, we worked together at First Baptist Church for way over 20 years. But she had come from the Houston area near Vardaman, where they have lots of sweet potatoes and lots of sweet potato recipes. This is 3.5 cups of sugar. So Nanette gave me this recipe for sweet potato bread, and that's what we're making today as our Make It Take It third gift. Listen, I have made this into muffins. I have made this into 3 8-inch loaf pans. Today, for our Make It Take It, we're making it into the small loaf pans. It should make 6. So we'll see how that works out. All right, so right now I've got 3.5 cups of sugar. I've got 4 eggs. I've got 1 cup of oil. Now, you could use vegetable oil, canola oil, etc. Or, to be very healthy, you could use avocado oil, not olive, but avocado oil. Has a teaspoon of vanilla. It has 1/4 of a teaspoon of coconut flavoring. Now guys, this is what makes it, is this coconut flavoring. It's just delicious. And then 2 cups of mashed and cooked sweet potatoes. All right, now here's what I do. Well, first of all, I cook these ahead of time, of course. And I had these in the refrigerator, but what I generally do is this. Ricky will buy the 40-pound boxes of sweet potatoes, which, you know, so many people do. In fact, he buys 5. He buys 1 for each of our children and gives to them, and of course 1 for us. So we love sweet potatoes baked, and they're so good for you. So we'll bake sweet potatoes and we'll use them. But then, after we've had the box for a month or 2, and it looks like maybe our sweet potatoes are getting just a little bit dried out or whatever, I'll go ahead and I'll cook the entire box. Whatever's left, I'll cook the entire box. Then, all right, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Let me go ahead and do the dry ingredients. Okay, this is 3.5 cups of self-rising flour. Okay, it already has leaven in it, it already has salt. We're going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and we're going to stir that in with our whisk. And then we're also going to add a cup of nuts. Now these are pecans, but you could do walnuts. Usually do walnuts, but these are pecans. If you don't like them, don't put them in. All right, I'm looking for my dough whisk. I've got a dough whisk that I brought, and it really works well because this is really hard to stir together. This is a dough whisk, and of course this, I don't know if you'd call this dough, really you could call it batter, but there's so much in here, it makes so much, it's so much easier to stir with the dough whisk. So anyway, back to the story about how I put up my sweet potatoes. So I'll cook all of the sweet potatoes that are left in the box. Cut out, if there are any bad places in them, I'll just cut them out and cook them all. All right, then I put them in my mixer, all right? This is something Lee Barron taught me. This is a lady who's no longer with us. She was a member of our church, and she made the most fabulous sweet potato casseroles. Let me move that out of the way. That's causing a problem. She made the most fabulous sweet potato casseroles, and her sweet potatoes were always light and fluffy, and I couldn't understand why. Mine were just kind of dense. I asked Lee, I said, how do you do this? She said, I put my, well, first of all, she was very picky about the sweet potatoes that she chose. When she would go to the grocery store, she would pick over the sweet potatoes and just get the certain ones that she thought were the best, and those were the sweet potatoes that she would cook. You know, sometimes you get sweet potatoes that are more orange, sometimes they're more kind of peachy looking. Anyway, she would choose the best ones, and then she would boil them. That's what I do with mine. I boil mine in a big pot or 2 pots, however many I have. And then she would put them in the mixer, and she would whip them up. That was the secret. So that's what I do. Sometimes I boil them whole. Sometimes I cut them up. Sometimes I peel them before I boil them. Sometimes I just don't. Sometimes I'll put them in their whole and I'll just let them go at it for an hour or whatever, and then peel them. So anyway, let me get all this done. So anyway, that's what I do, and I get a Ziploc bag and I put 2 cup measures in every Ziploc bag. Then I'll flatten them out and I'll freeze them. All right. Then I can use them for the rest of the year. The reason I put 2 cup measures in there, because this calls for 2 cups. I also make sweet potato pies, and that recipe calls for 2 cups. I also make sweet potato casserole, and that recipe calls for 4 cups. So in that case, I'll just take out 2 bags. And listen, what a time saver, because if you want to make sweet potato anything and you're starting from making the sweet potatoes, you're in trouble. All right, so I've got a cookie scoop here. I've got a ice cream scoop. What I use is a big cookie scoop at home, but if you have an ice cream scoop, you can use that. And I'm going to put it into these narrow opening. All right, most of y'all know, if you've been to the Food with the First Lady before and I've made anything like this, I like to line my loaf pans with a coffee filter. Now, this is just a coffee filter. So I sprayed it first with cooking spray, and then I lined it with this coffee filter, because so many times they stick on the corners, and you certainly don't want to give a gift where the corners stick. But if I take a coffee scoop and I ladle this in, or I put this in with a coffee scoop, then inside the narrow opening, it'll go right inside there. All right, so there's one. All right, I've got 5 more over here. I'm going to fill those up. We're going to put them in a 350-degree oven, and we're going to cook them we're going to start checking them at 40 minutes, and then if they need to go longer, we'll check them after that, and I'll let you know how much time it takes. Of course, now, if you were going to do an 8-inch, you would cook it at least 45 minutes, if not 50. So we'll see you after these get done. All right. Guys, I need to pop back on here and tell you something before I put these in the oven. Since these have coconut flavoring in them, they don't have any coconut in them, but they do have coconut flavoring. Sometimes I'll put chopped up coconut on top, so that when people see it, and if they eat it and they don't like coconut, sometimes they can be surprised, like, oh, this has coconut in it. I didn't know. So for half of these, I'm going to put, 2. This makes it a little prettier. I'm putting chopped up coconut. What I did, this is coconut out of the package, but I chopped it up, because I just didn't want the big old long strands of coconut on here. So I just chopped it up so it'd be more like a topping. So half of those, I'm going to do that. So when those people, if they get it, they're like, oh, that's got coconut in it. Which it actually doesn't, but it does have that taste. All right, so these are going in the oven, like I say, and we'll let you see what they look like when they come out.